Not guilty.
That's going to kind of go down in history because, again, that was just a visceral reaction that Rocky had hearing those words, not guilty, knowing you could be essentially imprisoned for 2 decades. Memorable moment. We will never forget it.
So was this not guilty verdict surprising to you?
I was not surprised at all because remember, the burden of proof rests with the prosecution. So what that means is the prosecution has to essentially prove each and every element of their claims beyond a reasonable doubt, and they utterly failed to do that. And when you look at the fact that they couldn't even produce the alleged weapon that was used, that is reasonable doubt in and of itself. So I didn't expect anything else besides not guilty.
And it was 3 weeks of trial. It was pretty crazy. So how would you sum up this 3 weeks?
It was crazy. It was heated. Listen, as attorneys, we always like to say trial is like theater, and this trial was theatrical. I have never seen anything like it in trials I've observed, trials I've done. You had the attorneys yelling at each other, the judge yelling at the attorneys, at one point, the prosecutor yelling at the judge. It was just explosive. It was definitely the most theatrical trial I've seen.
It was exciting to watch.
Yeah.
Given Rocky's team turned down the plea deal, it seemed they were pretty confident going into the trial, but their extreme reaction when the verdict came in yesterday might suggest otherwise. What are your thoughts on that?
Listen, no matter how confident you can be in your case, the fact is you never know what a jury is going to do. And so I think, hearing those words, not guilty, he had a visceral reaction. He was relieved. He was facing 24 years in prison. So that wasn't surprising that he reacted.
And what did you think witnessing that memorable moment of Rocky diving over the barrier to hug Rihanna and his
Yeah.
family?
That's going to kind of go down in history because, again, that was just a visceral reaction that Rocky had hearing those words, not guilty, knowing you could be essentially imprisoned for 2 decades. Memorable moment. We will never forget it.
Was the defendant diving over the barrier? Was that crossing any
Oh,
line?
yes, ASAP Rocky essentially jumping into the audience. I've again never seen anything like that before. Normally, what the judges will do in these high-profile cases, especially when there's cameras in the courtroom, he will admonish everyone not to react to the verdict. The fact that ASAP did that and the judge didn't say anything or reprimand him, they just kind of said, come back. We're not done reading the counts. That was interesting, but again, not surprising that this happened.
What moment during the trial, obviously there were many, many moments, but was there one moment that you think really locked in the jury's decision of not guilty?
Well, I don't think there was one particular moment. I think the prosecutor arguing in closing to the jury that, don't be swayed by Rihanna and the kids being here. I think that was very weak of the prosecutor to argue that. I think it backfired. It didn't resonate with the jury. At the end of the day, Rihanna is his life partner. She's the mother of his children. So that was a weak argument. I don't think it resonated.
And Rocky said to the jury, "Thank y'all for saving my life." What was he facing?
So Rocky was looking at 24 years in prison if he was convicted on these felony counts. That's essentially a lifetime for a young man who has his career ahead of him. He's married to arguably one of the biggest celebrities in the world. He turned down a plea deal where he could have had, I think, less than 6 months prison time. And I think that speaks volumes. He just refused to plead guilty to a crime that he believed he did not commit. So he took a gamble, but I think he did the right thing. He's exonerated. He can say that he is not guilty of these counts officially. A jury of 12 of his peers so stated. So good for him.
And although the jury selection process is created to weed out any bias, do you think Rocky's fame and very high-profile partner in Rihanna could have influenced anything in this trial?
That's a tough one because there is this concept of celebrity justice. And when you have a celebrity who is on trial, does that benefit him or her? Does it work to his or her detriment? I think it's hard to say. At the end of the day, I think our jury system worked. Jurors take their responsibilities very seriously. And I think, particularly in this case, they absolutely got it right here.
Do you think Rihanna appearing with their children for closing arguments helped with jury optics. Obviously, the prosecution kind of highlighted that in their closing. So, do you think that had anything to do with it?
Well, listen, I think if Rihanna was not there, I think if his children were not there, that would actually look ridiculous, right? This is his life partner. It's the mother of his children. Now, did the jurors use the fact that Rihanna was there in determining their not guilty verdicts? I doubt it, but certainly they would expect her to be there. I expected her to be there. I think the world expected her to be there. So I think we'll never know what was inside the minds of the jury.
And we saw tensions, were high, things got heated. So do you think any of those theatrics, any of those high tensions, impacted the case at all for the jury?
Well, I think that you have a very high profile case. You have cameras in the courtroom. You have two attorneys that are really pit bulls and sort of high profile themselves. And yes, you have a duty to be vigorous in defending your client, but sometimes that can go too far and you can run the risk of alienating a jury. So it's a very, very thin line that attorneys have to walk. I think it worked in this case. I think the defense attorney didn't go too far, but he was just aggressive enough.
Given what we saw in the 3 weeks of the criminal trial, what could the potential outcome of the civil be? Do you think there is enough in the evidence there that it could sway in Relly's favor?
So the burden of proof in a criminal case is much, much higher than it is in a civil case. The prosecution has to prove the claims beyond a reasonable doubt. But when you're looking at a civil case, it's just a preponderance of the evidence. You just have to prove that it was more likely than not that Rocky assaulted Relly with a weapon. So it doesn't necessarily mean Relly loses the civil case, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. He might dismiss the case so as not to get another sort of loss related to this, but a jury can really do anything, especially on a much lower burden of proof in civil court.
And Rocky is no stranger to legal trouble. Obviously, we know he's been in some legal trouble in the past. So, what should he do now that he is acquitted of this crime? Is this something where he should just be laying low?
Yes, I think APRocky needs to lay low. He has many projects in the works. I think he has a perfume line coming out. He has a movie that he's starring in with Denzel Washington. I believe that he was not guilty in this particular case, but again, you just never know what a jury is going to do. So my advice to Rocky would be lay low, keep your head down, focus on your family, focus on your career. You have a beautiful life partner. You have two beautiful children. Just stay focused on work and keep your head down. Stay out of trouble.